Okay, so good morning, everyone. I hope everybody is joined now. If not, then please join. Please ask your friends to join. Um,
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Ganesh. Okay, so as discussed earlier, yesterday we had a class and I had a discussion on what exactly the things are which we are going to cover. Considering the next week, 2 classes. Okay, so today we are straight away going to talk about the clauses, the types of clauses. I think yesterday I had a discussion on what are clauses, what are the elements of clauses, and today I'll be discussing the types of clauses and the structure of clauses, and then that is what we intend to discuss today through APRM, right? So I believe you all have an account of the sheets which was shared to you earlier. So please stick to that. Please try to practice again and again, considering the answer key which is also shared with you. So that is how you are going to master over whatever has been discussed so far. Okay, and since we have 2 classes in the coming week, if we have further doubts and discussions, we can definitely do that in the coming week of classes. Okay, so let's take on to what exactly the things are which are left to be discussed. Okay, so as we discussed about the structure of the elements of clauses in the last class, previous class, let us talk about the types, how clauses can be understood, right? Correct me if I am taking the pace of the previous class, and if I am audible, if I am audible to you properly, so that I can begin with. Astha, Adarsh, am I audible to you? Can I begin with? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So the types of clauses. When we talk about clauses, we know the elements of clauses. I mean, what can be those elements which can be identified within a clause? So the question comes when we have two or more clauses in a sentence. So we have already discussed the possibility of having two or more clauses in a sentence, right? So then the question comes that what exactly the relation should be, whether the two clauses are coordinating each other, I mean, they're helping each other to work with. So I mean to say that there are two independent clauses. Both of the clauses are working in isolation. I mean, they can work in isolation, but still we are using it just to form that combination. Or there is a subordination. So it means that we have an independent and a dependent clause working together. So there is a conditional, element present in that. So if I say that if the college will open in the month of January, then the students will come from home, right? So the condition is that once the college will open, then only students will come. So until the college reopens, there's no point in asking students to come or expecting students to come. So there are two things over here, right? One is having a coordination. So coordination, as you see, that they can be of equal status. So that means that the independent clauses have, that position or that potential which can sustain independently, right? Whereas when we talk about subordination, then one can be the part of other clause, right? So there is a dependency over there when we have two clauses working together. So that is how subordination and coordination can be understood. Now, a coordinate, this is further, explained by saying that a coordinate clause does not depend on something else in the sentence, whereas a subordinate clause relies on a coordinate clause for meaning. Okay, so just in order to remind you that coordination means independency, and subordination means dependency. Okay? A subordinate clause relies on coordinate clause, and it independently can neither form a sentence nor convey a complete thought because they are dependent, right? So that's the understanding. So here you can see that there are two clauses over here. Both of them are independent clauses. Now, either of them can be removed and the meaning can be understood in isolation. But we are using both the clauses, both the dependent clauses with a coordinate conjunction just in order to give a complete meaning and adding up information. So we have an independent clause with both of them, and we have a coordinate conjunction to give the meaning, which can be understood more clear. Now we have in 14, we have a construction which gives you an idea about the subordination. So we have one independent and one dependent clause working, right? So we have, I'll give you a chocolate working as a dependent one, independent one. And if you bring a glass of water, is working like a dependent one. So we have a dependent clause, which is, which requires the question number, the first part of the clause, first part of the sentence, which is a independent clause. Okay. So that is what you can understand if you talk about coordination and subordination. Now, when we talk about subordinated clauses and the types of subordinate clauses, so we are basically concerned with the dependent clauses. And when we talk about the dependency, when we talk about the types, the subtypes of dependent clauses, then comes the types within those dependent clauses. So we have noun clause and other clauses like adverb clause, prepositional clause, relative clause, comparative clause. So these clauses basically comes into the picture when we talk about subordination, when we talk about dependency, right? So we have a noun clause which is basically a dependent one, right? So when we talk about dependency, we are concerned with these types of clauses, which we are going to see one by one. Now, you can see over here that subordinate clauses can function as a noun, an adjective, or an adverb in a sentence. Okay. So, subordinate clause can function as a noun, adjective, or as an adverb in a sentence. So, when we see these different word classes, we can identify it as a subordinate clause. There's a potential to be a subordinate clause. Okay. So on the basis of function, there are three types of subordinate clauses. So let's look at all of them one by one. Okay. So the first one is noun clause. So what is a noun clause? It can function as a subject. It can function as an object. It can function as a subject or object complement. Okay. And this can be a noun, adjective, pronoun that follows the linking verb. So in sentence number 15, you can see that what you read determines your mental schema. So this is basically the noun clause which is working as a subject. So this is the subject which we are referring to, and then we have the other remaining things in the sentence. We have the predicate, basically the predicative with an object. So this what you read is working as a subject here. So this noun clause has one possibility. The other possibility that is that it can work as an object. Now, if it is said that she did not know why the teacher was angry with her, this whole clause can be an object clause, a noun clause which is working as an object. Okay, so she did not know what, basically, that's the question. So she did not know why the teacher was angry with her. So this whole chunk of clause can be understood as a noun clause because the head is the subject is the noun, right? Are you following me, everyone? Or you're just listening?
No, sir. I mean, listen. I'm listening.
Listening with your mind open.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So then that is important. Or some people are just passive listeners. So for them, this is difficult to understand, right? So please be an active listener and then respond accordingly. Okay. So in point number 16, sentence number 16, we can see that how the object is, how the noun clause is working as an object. Now in point number 17, we can see that the noun clause is basically complementing the subject. So this can also be a point, this can also be a way how a noun clause can be understood in a sentence. Okay. So what is money is what I desire most. So basically it is connecting to the subject where verb is the linking one, which is connecting the subject to the subject complement. Okay. So what I desire most is money. That is how you can understand. Now, there is, there is an important point which is written over here, which requires our attention, right? What is that? Noun clauses may begin with WH words, right? We have seen how it is in all the cases, and they may begin with that, or they may have a zero that. So there are two examples over here which will give you this idea that if we say that they say honesty is the best policy, here this that is realized at the zero level. Okay, so we have seen already, like there are some concepts related to having something without having it. So we call it dummy subjects, right? So in the case, if I say it is raining or something like that, there are dummy subjects working over there. So we have a subject, but it doesn't have any sense, right? It is just to keep a subject, okay, for that reason. So that is the concept, that is related to this, what is happening here. So they say that honesty is the best policy. So this that is not realized, it is realized in 18 without using it. So such constructions can also be there in the noun clauses. So if there is a that over here, please don't confuse with it. So this that can also be the beginning of a noun clause, or it can also be dropped. Usually people don't use this that. So if they say that they say honesty is the best policy, so this is basically, pre-understood. So what is actually there present. So this is also one kind of, one type of clause, noun clause, which can be understood without any problem. Now coming to the second clause, the second type of clause we have, which is adverb clause. So we have had a lot of discussion on adverbs, adverb phrases, adverbials. So let us have a look on how it is different from what we have been discussing by now, like the adverbials. So there is a difference between adverbials and adverb clause, right? So in particular, if you would like to understand how it works, it mainly answers the question like why, when, where, what if, what with result, for what purpose. Okay? So mainly it addresses these questions, right? So adverb clauses begin with the subordinating conjunctions. Okay? So we are not using the coordinating conjunctions. Coordinating conjunctions are used for independent clauses. So we have subordinating conjunctions for subordinate clauses, right? Now you can see an example over here. So these conjunctions will be working here under the adverbial clause. Okay. So since I'm responsible for the delay, I should be punished. So you can see that there is a dependent clause working with the adverbial clause, right? So you can take a point that for in the cases of adverbial clauses, adverb clauses, dependent clauses will be functioning as an ADV clause. Okay, AD clause or ADV clause. So please, I'll repeat once again that please don't confuse with the nomenclatures before the exam. Just stick to the whole point. Okay. Anybody wants to say something?
I mean,
Yeah, Shubhanshi.
sir, in the first example, I mean, example number 20,
Mhm.
which word is adverb here? Or we are just saying it's adverbial clause on the basis of above things like it is answering why and it is starting from since. So just because of that we are saying it an adverb clause, or there is some any word which is adverb and I am not finding that.
Okay. See, Shubhanshi, what is happening here that the independent clause is I should be punished, right? This
Hmm.
can be working in an isolation, right?
Yes.
Now, the reason, the purpose, that is the main point. Okay. Why basically I should be punished if that is being asked in the, that is being reflected in the clause, then we are considering it as an adverbial clause. The whole chunk will be the adverbial clause. Here we are not concerned with the word or the, the main keyword why we are saying that, because you can see there can be, even longer length of an adverbial clause which can exist. But the point here you have to make is that you have to see whether why, for what purpose it has been used. You can see that this particular adverb clause is again an addition to the main, the independent clause. Why we are saying that? I mean, we can drop them off again. Okay. But just because answering why I should be punished, it has been mentioned. Okay, so for adverb clauses, you have to check, why exactly that particular clause has been mentioned. If you can address any of these questions, why, when, where, what if, what with, what result, for what purpose, then you are adding up an extra clause, which is a dependent one, of course, and which is just giving a reference to the main clause, which is I should be punished. Okay, so it's nothing like the phrases, I mean, how we have identified the phrases based on the head. Did you get the point, Subhanshi?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now, same is the case when you see the other sentences under the adverbial clause. When we have Ratan Tata was positive of its market when Tata Nano was launched. So same is the case. So we have a different reason when, okay, and then we have wherever we find work, we go wherever we find work. So again, different sense is coming over here. In 23, we again have the terrorist was sentenced to death so that others should learn a lesson. So there is a purpose behind this. And then the last one, if he joins us tomorrow, he will teach phonetics. So you can see that what if he doesn't joins tomorrow or if he joins tomorrow, right? So there is a solution, there is a reason why we are using a dependent clause in order to teach, in order to understand the purpose of that particular dependent clause. Although it's a dependent, but there is a purpose behind using that dependent clause with the independent one. Okay, so that is how adverbial clause or adverb clause can be understood in a sentence. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
What about others? 67 students are there in the class. So can I feel at least 7 students apart from Subhanshi who is listening currently?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So Adarsh, you are the first one out of 67.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Abhishek. Okay. So if you haven't, yes, Abhijit. I hope this is your nod for understanding what we have discussed right now. If not, you can say you want if you want to say something. Okay, so if we have understood about the adverbial clauses, how it functions, we'll move on to the relative clause, which let me see, I have a chat. So yeah, so it's clear to Deepak as well. So what is a relative clause? So as you know, as the name suggests, relative clauses or relative basically is establishing relativity with something, right? So relative clauses function like post modifiers in NP and PP. So if you're using a noun phrases or prepositional phrases, these relative clauses will be functioning as a post modifier. Okay, this is point number one. Point number two is that a relative clause generally begins with a relative pronoun. Okay, very important point to be noticed. So it generally begins with a relative pronoun and it can function like a post modifier in NPs and PPs. So these 2 points are enough to identify whether we have a relative clause or not. So relative pronouns are whom, who, which, that, whichever, whoever, whomever or whomsoever. Okay. So the examples here mentioned are the teacher whom I love most has resigned. The novel that won the Man Booker Prize did not sell much. Or I went to the market, which is famous for low-cost mobiles. So we can see that the relative pronouns are working actively in all these 3 sentences. And the relative clauses are functioning as a post modifier to the NP and PP. So in point number 25 and point number 26, we can see that the NP, which is the novel and the teacher, we have the relative clause functioning. Whereas in 27, we have the PP, which is I went to the market, which is a PP, and it has been connected with the relative clause, which is establishing a connection. So we can see how this post modifier can be also understood as a relative clause. Okay, so there are 2-3 things here. We are saying that relative clauses work as a post modifier for NP and PP that we can see over here, and it should start with a relative pronoun. Okay, please don't confuse with relative pronoun and reflexive pronoun. You all know what is reflexive pronouns? So myself, yourself, herself, such pronouns are reflexives, and relative pronouns are which establishes a connection with the subject which you are referring to in a sentence. So this is how relative clauses function in a sentence. Is it clear, Shubhanshi, to you?
Yes.
Others?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. Now let's look at some more instances where a relative clause function with a different sense, right? So let's focus on this particular part. So in noun clauses, similar to noun clauses, a relative clause also begin with a WH word, that, or with a zero relative pronoun. Okay. Now relative clause can be restrictive and non-restrictive. So there is an important thing to be noticed here. That if we talk about the relative clause, it can either be restrictive or non-restrictive. How it is? Let's look the example over here. So if we say that children who learn easily should start school as early as possible, and the same sentence, if I say children who learn easily should start school as early as possible. So by the help of a comma, you need to say these sentences in a different way, right? What is happening here? That children who learn easily, by saying this thing, it basically, give a concrete idea why you are saying. You are connecting children who learn easily should start school as early as possible. So there can be only one interpretation with this. If you are saying this, there cannot be any other interpretation. Whereas in the second one, it gives an extra information to the sentence. Okay. Now, children who learn easily should start school as early as possible. So these 2 differences can be understood as a restrictive and a non-restrictive one. Within the non-restrictive clause, it adds extra information to the sentence, and the meaning of the sentence would not change if the clause were to be omitted. Now suppose if I omit this particular clause, अगर इसको हम लोग delete कर देते हैं मान लो, so we can say that children should start school as early as possible. So if I even drop this part, the meaning will be clear that what I intend to say. But if I drop this part, children should start school as early as possible, the meaning would be not similar. I mean, the restriction will be lifted then. Did you get the point?
Yes, sir.
So in 28, what is happening that it exactly elaborates that which kind of children. I mean, we are talking about the children who learn easily should start school as early as possible. So that's the sense which you can get from 28 number. Now in 29, children, so you are omitting this part who learn easily. So children in general, all the children basically who learn easily and who doesn't learn easily, both of them should start school as early as possible. So restrictive and non-restrictive sense in relative clauses can also be understood with this understanding. Okay, everyone, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Adarsh, are you following? Okay. Now talking about comparative clauses. So as the name again suggests, comparative clauses compare basically two clauses. So similar to relative clauses, it can modify a noun and they can modify an adjective or an adverb, which is not the case in the relative one. So under relative clauses, we didn't find an adjective or an adverb which is modified. But in comparative clauses, we have nouns and we can modify a noun and also we can modify adjectives or an adverb. Now comparative clauses generally follows a comparative form since we are using comparative, and it is introduced by a conjunction. So there are 2 points again over here. Comparative clauses can modify a noun, okay, and they can also modify an adjective or an adverb. So there are 2 points over here, and the last point is that it is introduced by a conjunction then. So this is the compulsion. That is how you compare them. So we consume more food than we grow. She is more intelligent than her brother, and he works more diligently than Rohan does. So as we can see that these this conjunction then is working in all the cases, and we have a noun, we have an adjective, and we have an adverb which is being modified within the comparative clause. Okay, so these 3 cues will help you in identifying the comparative clause in a running sentence. Okay, now the last one, is it clear, everyone? Okay, now the last one is prepositional clauses. So we have understood about prepositional phrases. Now this is prepositional clauses. What's the difference? As similar to PP, which we have already studied, which have NPs within it, prepositional clauses they also include noun clauses without any problem. But the structure of prepositional clause as compared to PP, where we had P plus NP, we have P plus NCL. So we have a preposition with a noun clause. So it is more or like similar to what we have did in PP. There we had a P plus NP. Here we have a P plus NC, that is NC clause. Okay, noun clause. And this P is followed by a WH word. So this is an extension to that. The preposition will be followed by a WH word which will initiate the noun clause. Let's look at that, how it is. The prepositional clause can function as an adverbial or as a post modifier. So this is one more addition to this. So the first one is that the structure is this one. We have a P plus NCL. Okay. And the second thing is that it will be followed by, the P will be followed by a WH which is a part of NCL. And a prepositional clause can function as an adverbial or a post modifier. Okay, so we have a prepositional clause which functions as an adverbial. You all know what an adverbial is, or it can function as a post modifier. So we have a head which is modified by something which will come after that head. Okay, so if I say that I was surprised at what I saw, this is an adverbial basically, and we do not have any proof of what was done yesterday. So we have a prepositional clause working as a modifier over here. Okay? So we
Yes,
can
sir.
see how a post modifier and how an adverbial can be understood. Now this point can be simply dropped if you feel like I was surprised. So if I know the context, what you saw, because of that you were surprised, I won't, I will not be concerned about the adverbial, what you are adding. But in order to modify, we do not have any proof of what basically. So you need to add that, and that's the essential element, the the essential element within the sentence. And for that reason, you are using this prepositional clause to identify or to modify what you have actually said earlier. Okay, so you can see, in a nutshell, we can see that all the clauses which we have seen, the types of clauses within the clauses, all of them are the dependent one on the independent idea. Okay, there are differences. There are some cues like using WH words, using that, or using then under relative, or using the instances under the adverbial clauses where we have different instances where can be understood through the adverbial clause while we are exactly adding that idea. So we have seen that such instances are possible, such constructions are possible. And once you remember this, once you write, some examples based on this understanding, you'll get an idea about how you are using the sentence structures, how you're using the clause structures to give you a complete idea. So please go through this particular sheet once again. This will give you an idea about what we have done so far, and try to write some examples out of your own under the different categories, which will give you some more certainty. And that is how you are going to prepare this particular sheet. Okay? So if you have any doubt, you can ask me right now based on what we have done today.
No, sir.
And yeah, Shubhanshi. Yes, Shubhanshi, are you clear? Everything is clear at your end?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's
So I
good.
would request. Yeah, sorry, Shubhanshi.
I said no, sir. I meant that I don't have any doubts.
Okay. Jitendra, you want to say something? ओके गलती से ऑन हो जाता है इनका देखो नो सर ऐसे बोला जैसे जल्दी में भागा कहीं ठीक है सो प्लीज गो थ्रू द शीट if you have any doubt you can definitely ask in the coming week we have 2 classes left so we'll be taking up questions on whatever you have with you okay you can meanwhile you can start writing to me if any doubt you entertain at any point of time I'll look to that question and I'll respond you back ठीक है mark my words I'll respond definitely ठीक है please don't restrain from asking questions and one more class will be taken so I'll be taking a class next week the first one based on the common errors on what we have done so far ठीक है so please attend that class and then let's revise if you have any doubt you can just ping to me just you can write to me anytime is that okay everyone does it sound meaningful
Yes, sir.
okay so thank you everybody for listening patiently let's hope that things are clear at your end and you are preparing well for your exam so thank you once again and take care everybody meet you see you in the next class thank you once again take care
Thank you, sir.
thank you Adarsh thank you everyone
Thank you, sir.
thank you you.